Good morning. Today is the 25th of Shvat, Kafei Shvat, and the 16th of February. Unbelievable. I actually have this straight in my head. I didn't even have to look it up. Okay. So we're learning the mimer about why Jethro had to come before the Torah was given. We're up to page 78 in the second paragraph. Achadain, but still, צריך להבין מיהו הנותן כוח לבחינת התורה שנתלבשה בדברים הגשמיים. We have to understand what is it that gives Torah the power, the ability to enclose within material affairs. העניין דהנה בבחינת חוכמה הילה שהוא בדרך כלל בבחינת חכים ולא בחוכמה ידיעה יש שתי מדרגות. So now we come into something that was talked about from the Alter Rebbe many times, that within what we call higher wisdom, within the Torah itself, we have two different levels. Right? The sages themselves, they differentiate between two different levels. The one is called B'chinat Novlot Chochma Shelamala Torah. The first one is called, and it's something that has always troubled people, it's from Pirkei Avos, when it says that the low-hanging fruit, Novlot is like the low-hanging fruit of Torah, of wisdom, is of the supernal wisdom is Torah. So what's he saying here? He's saying something that's higher than Torah. There's Chochma Ilah, there's supernal wisdom that is before Torah. What does that mean? So it's explained in many Maimarim by the Alter Rebbe, by the students of the Alter Rebbe. Especially Rabbi Isaac has a whole Maimar that's dedicated to it, or a lot of it is dedicated to it, called Maimar Yitzias Mitzrayim. And there he explains what the Alter Rebbe said, that originally, where do we learn this whole concept of wisdoms, two wisdoms? We learn it from the splitting of the waters on the second day. We say that there's higher waters and lower waters. Right? The higher waters, they became, as it were, the supernal wisdom, the divine wisdom, revealed wisdom. And the lower waters, they became the mundane wisdom, the wisdom that you have to garner from experimentation, from having some kind of experience with something. And that's like human wisdom. And so the general way to divide these is to come and say that the higher wisdom is Torah, and the lower wisdom is science. That's easy. Whatever the science is of whatever day, right? And by most people, the science of Adam's period was animism. Was animism, spiritualism, all these different isms that were relevant back then. Today, nobody really, unless you're kind of weird and you're whatever. So that was the usual way to explain it. But the Alter Rebbe says something different. That since it was all one water in the beginning, so the Torah, which is the higher wisdom, is already a split from the wisdom. In the same way that science is also a split. So the supernal wisdom and the lower wisdom, they're splits from the original wisdom. That's how he explains Novlot Torah Shelamala, Novlot Chochma Shelamala Torah. That's how he explains that the low-hanging fruit of the supernal wisdom above is Torah. Because the Torah is the low-hanging side of the supernal wisdom, out of which these two types of wisdom came out. So what we call higher wisdom is relative. It's not really the higher wisdom. It's the low-hanging fruit of the higher wisdom. So that's very interesting. So he says, what he's saying is that there's a wisdom that's before science and Torah. And that's not something people are so familiar with. But that's his shita. And so now he says what? The low-hanging fruit הוא בחינת השכל שמתלבשת בכל פרטי דיני התורה כאשר הוא פסול. So he says this wisdom, why do we say it's low-hanging fruit of it becomes Torah? He says it's not the Torah itself. The Torah itself is something else. The Torah itself is beyond time. But that wisdom came into Torah in order to allow us to study it in a way that would fit the physical material world. And that's more like what people are used to hearing. Right? That the Torah is beyond time and space. it's definitely beyond human existence. And so, if I'm a quadruped or something, living on some planet in the Andromeda galaxy, who knows? I don't know what I am. Right? It's something else. I could also access the Torah, but the Torah would have to fit itself to an existence, I don't know, on a planet that doesn't have gravity. I don't know what. Imagine a whole different set of circumstances. The Torah should be able to fit, because the Torah is truly universal. So it doesn't matter. It's just that what we say, the low-hanging fruit came into the Torah, became the Torah. What we mean is that the low-hanging fruit of the supernal wisdom is what allowed us to transform and apply the Torah into our situation as human beings. And then we got something called B'chol pirtei dinei Torah kasher pasul v'chulu. But if we were a different type of existence, it would still be Torah. It would just be understood in a different way. We'd have to use a different type of logic to apply it to where we live. Now, the interesting thing is, would it still say? Would it still say V'adaber Hashem b'nei Yisrael emor? So according to the sages, yes, it would still say that. But Bnei Yisrael could be a completely different concept applied in that world. It would be something else. Right? What are we? Is this? No, this is the fact that I'm a Jew. That's an incarnation of a great idea, of a great spiritual truth. This is what it is. And it could be, maybe there could be other incarnations of it. It could come out in different ways also. It's not the only way. Right now, in our physical world, this is all we have. But we believe that the Mashiach will come and he'll show us a deeper dimension, which is already Chasidus, which is already understanding that you can go way beyond human existence and the Torah still applies. But okay, that's a different discussion. In any case, and this is called the light of Father, of the Abba, Partuf Abba, of Atzilut, like the Chokhmah of Atzilut, which encloses itself within the revealed dimension of the Torah. V'asheni, Ibchinat Chokhmah Stima, Shinkat Ha'ulumot Chokhmah, V'ubchinat Pnimiut Torah. So what touches upon the supernal wisdom in and of itself? Right? You take the Torah, and what does the Torah do to the Torah? It begins to reveal the Chokhmah Stima, it begins to reveal the concealed wisdom in it. So it doesn't say Yaakov is Yaakov and Leah is Leah and Rachel is Rachel. Instead, we know that there were people like this, and that's what the Torah talked about. They were the incarnation of this. But really, what is this talking about? It's about Partzufim. There's a Partzuf called Yaakov, and there's a Partzuf called Rachel, and a Partzuf called Leah. And there's this whole different constellation of things, which again was reflected, it enclosed itself within the story in our world. Not to say, Chaz v'shalom, that this didn't happen. Of course it happened. But that story that happened was an example, was an application of the higher supernal wisdom. And so Yaakov, if you went to see him every day of the year, every day, would you find him being the Partzuf called Yaakov? Perhaps not. I'm not troubled by it. Because I know that overall that's what he was. But it could be that in a given day, he's not. Could be. Why? Because he can't always reveal it. What we believe about the patriarchs is, like Sefer HaBahir says, that Avram was so much the midah of Chesed, that as long as he was in the world, Chesed said, I have no other need, no other means to reveal myself. I don't need to reveal myself any other way. I'm perfectly content. Perfectly content. This is perfectly fine. But does that mean there was no other Chesed in the world? Of course there was other Chesed. But he was such an exemplar of this that it was like Chesed doesn't need to be anywhere else. Because of course he wanted the whole world to act with kindness. That's what he taught. So of course he had some success, and he was able to bring Chesed to other places. And this is called Ta'alumot Chokhmah. It's not Novlot Chokhmah, but Ta'alumot Chokhmah. There's the low-hanging fruit, and there is the hidden aspect, the hidden fruit. Ta'alumot, the things that are mysterious, which really means that they're alumim, they are concealed. So in the language of the sages, Chokhmah Stima, what the Zohar calls Chokhmah Stima, the concealed wisdom, they call ta'alumot chokhmah. Same thing, it's just in Hebrew or in Aramaic, because it means the same thing exactly. Ta'alumot chokhmah. V'hu b'chinat pnimiyut Torah. That's what we call the inner dimension of Torah. V'hainu b'chinat chokhmah de ein sof atzmo, shu b'chinat ein sof mamash. And this is called the wisdom of the infinite also. It's also sometimes called the wisdom of the infinite, which is the infinite itself. והכוח הזה שתרד החוכמה דאצילות שבחינת חוכמת תורה לברר בירורים בחוץ ומבחינת פנימיות החוכמה שבחינת חוכמה סתימה. So the power of the revealed wisdom, the low-hanging fruit, to come down and to be applied into our world depends on pnimius Torah. It depends on the inner dimension of Torah, this chokhmah of atzilus, what he calls. רק שהבירור נעשה על ידי בחינת הנובלות, and the clarification itself, the refinement itself of the world is done through the low-hanging fruit. אך הכוח הזה הוא מבחינת פנימיות החוכמה. But the strength to do this, so that the Torah can come down, that comes from the inner dimension of Torah. What does that mean? It means that without inner dimension of Torah, like today, people don't have the ability to refine the world. If they don't learn pnimius, they lose the ability. Everybody needs it. So there's some people, they're very, special people, and they only learn nigla all day long. If there is such a thing still. I don't know if there's still such a thing. Why do I say if there's still such a thing? Because even if you learn Gemara, the only way you cannot learn Pnimius is if you skip over all the Agadita. And I don't think there's anyone who does that anymore. There used to be. It used to be true. Before the Arizal, there was such a thing. They didn't learn the Agadita. They skipped over it. Why did they skip over it? They didn't understand it. They didn't understand what it wanted. It didn't make sense. How is it related to the sugya? Right? The Rebbe also cried about this. We put out a book. There's Shara Nigla and Shara Chasidus. What did you just do? You just made the same mistake that they made 500 years ago.
Who put out the book?
Take any book in Chabad. Take any Haros Anashvat Mimim. It's divided that way, and the Rebbe cried about it. So what are you doing? So the thing we can say to alleviate a little bit of the criticism is that they really didn't know how to put it together. And so they said, okay, it has to be the novlot separately from the talumot. But really, they have to be together. You have to write Torah. And the Rebbe showed a few examples, many examples. A lot of the sichos. We're taking the nigla and explaining it according to Chochmah Nistar, according to the Talmud's Chochmah. ועל פי כל הנ"ל יובן מה שקודם מתן תורה היו צריכים להודעת יתרו דווקא. So now, finally, in chapter 5, we come to his words about why we needed Yitro to come before the Torah could be given. And it's not just that he came, lehoda'at Yitro, his acknowledgement that Gadol Hashem mikol ha'elokim, that God is greater than all gods. D'inei Yitro haya kohen Midyan. He was the priest of Midian. And we know that the word Midian, especially then, meant madon umeriva. It means people that don't get along. It means some kind of quarrel, arguments, and so on. Vu b'chinat chokhmah de klipa. And this is, Midian is usually associated with the external part of the wisdom of the klipa. את זה לעומת זה עשה אלוקים, וכמו שיש בחינת חוכמה וקדושה שבחינת חוכמת התורה, זהו בחינת משה שנשמתו היה מבחינת חוכמה אליו, ולכן נתראה התורה על ידו. כמו כן יש בקליפה לעומת זה דמשה. Just as Moshe Rabbeinu, he is the wisdom, not the netzach. Because in the Zohar, he's the wisdom. The wisdom of Atzilus, he represents the wisdom of Torah. So Yitro represented the wisdom of the Klipa. הוא יתרו שהיה כהן מדיין והיה חכם גדול בחוכמה חיצונית דאומות או דעבודה אחרת. That he was the priest of Midian, which means in their time, that's why I said this already earlier in the week, in their time this was the science. And he was the expert in that science. The science was idolatry. How do you manipulate nature? By making a talisman, like the Rambam writes in the beginning of Hilchos Avodah Zarah. He explains how it worked. In the beginning they thought that the stars had certain powers, which they probably do. Some powers, I don't know if they're relevant for us today, but they had these powers. And then they said, we'll make a stone, and this stone we put in a certain place, and this stone grabs, it captures the power of that star. It's called a talisman. And then over time they started fashioning these stones. It had to have a certain shape. And that's how idolatry came about. So it was an attempt to capture the forces of nature. Like today we're trying to capture, right, electricity. We're trying to capture it. We capture it. We know how to do it. That was the science of the time. That's how they regarded science. So Jethro, he was the expert in all these forms of capturing the forces of nature. Or as we call it today, it's not just idolatry, it's called animism. That's the name, animism. And he's called the priest of Midian, which is the opposite of the wisdom of the holiness. Why? Chokhmah is always selflessness, it's always self-nullification. So when you have self-nullification, can you argue with someone? Can you quarrel with them? You cannot agree, you can be in a disagreement maybe, but you can't quarrel with them because you're always batal. Okay, so you say so. והוא תכלית הייחוד וחוכמה בינה עין ויש, הם תרין רעים דלא מתפרשים, ויש לומר וחכים בחוכמה. מה שאין כן בלעומת זה, החוכמה הוא גורם מדנים ופירוד דווקא, וזהו כהן מדיין לשון ריב ומדון. But when it comes to the klipa, when it comes to the impure wisdom, there it only causes strife and disagreement and quarrels, because that's what it means that people fight over religion. And we know a lot of religious wars. Why? Because I think this and you think that, and we can't get along. But in Torah, because it's the chokhmah of kedusha, it's the wisdom of kedusha, everything is a state of nullification, because we're all nullified to God. So even though we might disagree, and we may show different faces of the wisdom, we don't fight in the end. Ve'etvahev besufa. In the end, there's love between us. Why? Because we know that we're all representing elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. Both of these are the words of Hashem. Okay, so we'll end here. And continue tomorrow. Hopefully try to finish it tomorrow. We have one more page. What? Yeah, It's very optimistic of me, right? Keeps you going.
If only you would have come yesterday.